Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a box that still exists. And this is some box. The Rameau Opera Collection on Erato. Warner probably doesn't even know it issued this. Don't tell them. I promise I won't if you won't. You just buy it. 27 CDs of Rameau. This is amazing stuff. Amazing. Rameau is one of the all-time great composers of the Baroque era. I mean, French opera was a world of its own. It's totally different from the normal Baroque opera of like the Italian and Handel and those people, and Germany even. The French school was a different tradition that was inaugurated by Lully, who was actually Italian, but he turned himself into a French person. Then he stomped on his foot with his cane. He used to conduct beating on the floor with a staff, and he crunched his foot and it got infected and he died. Isn't that interesting? Part of my series of composers who died interestingly, along with Chausson, who died in a bicycle accident. And then, there's the whole list of, well, never mind. Rameau. We're talking about Rameau, right? Rameau was a theorist. He really controlled French music. I mean, for his life was 1683 to 1764. He had a long and very productive life, but he did not begin writing operas until much, much later, towards the endish of his career, the last 20 years or so, 25 years or so, somewhere around there. The first one was Hippolyte et Aricie. I wonder if there's a date here. Yeah, well, who cares? Anyway, it's in here, and that's what matters. The French Baroque opera was designed to elevate and kind of confirm the absolutist monarchical status quo, and it was a combination of singing and dancing. There's a lot of dance in it, so there are wonderful Rameau suites. Opera suites, tons of them. I mean, dance suites that are just marvelous, orchestral suites. And Rameau was one of the first composers who was a great, great orchestrator. I mean, he exploited the orchestra tremendously, and his dance music is very physical. It's marvelous and full of rhythm and verve and color. And it sounds quite often a lot more modern than it really is. But the actual musical stuff, it was almost all conveyed, the music, the plot, the story, in arioso, you would call it nowadays, which is not quite an aria. In other words, it doesn't have melodies with closed forms that repeat themselves regularly. I mean, sometimes it does, but basically, those things were for the dance numbers. The actual plot and story is sung with melodies over accompaniments, and there is no recitative. That is, those passages between the arias where, a harpsichord just clanks along and they do dialogue effectively. It's sung, but it's dialogue, and it moves at the pace of dialogue. French opera doesn't do any of that. French opera sets the whole thing to unbroken music, and the unit of music in French opera of this period, and Rameau's type of opera, is really the scene, the complete scene. So there are long-breathed melodies. Sometimes there are longer stretches of continuous music, interspersed with dances. And quite often, the king, who was originally Louis XIV, or the later ones, and the queen, they would participate in some of the dances. Sometimes they would sing. They were involved in these productions. And so these productions had to be extremely cognizant of the fact that the royal personage might, or definitely would, be in attendance, and the success or failure of the work and the composer was heavily dependent on royal patronage. And the result was a very, very special medium, cultivated and designed to appeal to a particular taste. And Rameau was great at that. And it just so happens, fortunately, that there was enough universal elements in that taste to make us want to listen to the music now. Because Rameau was a genius, an absolute genius. And this box has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 Rameau masterworks in it. And it's just, oh my goodness, it's wonderful to have. Of course, you don't get libretti at all. You get a little bookie. But, you can find them maybe somehow, possibly, or just read the story and listen to the music. Let me just tell you what's in here. And then I want to turn you loose to just go enjoy this stuff. I mean, you might want to start your Rameau thing with a disc of orchestral suites. I mean, that might be fun because they really are just delightful. Anyway, let me see here. We have the first of his tragédies lyriques, whatever you call them, Hippolyte et Aricie, which is, Phèdre. It's Racine's Phèdre, the same story. And everybody did a Phèdre or Hippolyte and Aricia, or whatever her name was. So that's that story. And then we get Les Indes Galantes. Now this is sort of an opera ballet thing, which is wonderful. It's about like different cultures and different dance things from like colonial culture things. And they all wind up sounding like Rameau anyway. Let me tell you who's doing these things. Hippolyte et Aricie is Christie with Les Arts Florissants, and it's just, just a wonderful cast. And it's let's see, Padmore, Pazzarella, Hunt, and someone else, and whatever, who cares? It's a great performance. Then we have Les Indes Galantes with Jean-François Paillard. You remember him of the Pachelbel Canon guy, right? And then we have Castor et Pollux with Harnoncourt. Whoa, Harnoncourt, because they get to do the Teldeck stuff here too, which is great. And then we get Les Fêtes d'Hébé, the Fêtes of Old Hebe. That's another one of those, the gods have a party in honor of the reigning monarch type works. And that's also with Christie. So that's wonderful. And then we have Dardanus. Oh, I remember this one with Raymond Leppard and the Opera de Paris. And this is with Frederica von Stade and Christiane Edipierre and Joseph Van Damme and, famous people. French Baroque opera did not have castrati, by the way, so the characters usually sing with voices that resemble the sex that they actually are. To some people, that's an advantage. I remember when this the Raymond Leppard Dardanus came out, and there was a whole thing about which edition it was and how they did it and all that, because most of these operas exist in several versions, and making a modern version, sometimes people combine them, and it causes horror in scholarly circles, and it's a wonderful performance. I'll just leave it at that. Then there's Platée, which is a comedy, one of the rare ones. This is with Marc Minkowski, Les Musiciens du Louvre. Platée is about a nymph who thinks that she's attractive. And Platée is actually, it's a trouser role. It's a guy in drag, because guys in drag are not likely to be sexy nymphs. And there's a lot of, nasty humor at Platée's expense. And that's the plot, basically. Then there's Pygmalion. We know Pygmalion, right? This is with Nicholas McGegan. And Les Surprises d'Amour with Minkowski, and Nais with McGegan again, and Zoroastre with William Christie, and La Guirlande with William Christie, and Zephyr with William Christie, and finally, last but not least, Les Boreades with John Eliot Gardiner. Now, if I were to tell you what all of these things are about and what's going on in them, it would take the rest of my life. And like I said, the plot is less important than the music, and you can find synopses of all of these things and all of the other information you need. What you really need to know for our purposes is that this is really a steal. A steal. I mean, I'm telling you, don't tell Warner. I am serious. Who knows what they'll do if they find out this exists? It's marvelous, absolutely marvelous. So I want to tell you about it now and let you know you can get like a huge chunk of French Baroque opera in one handy box, and you can spend the rest of your life listening to it. You never have to get anything else until, of course, I hear something else that's great and I tell you about it. But you know what I mean. Really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And unlike the Gluck edition that I just talked about in Ripe for Reissue on Decca, which is out of print, this is not. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.